We did learn about boats and equipment, basic requirement for a new adapted program, and also development program. For that information, today, Mr. Massimo, Paravolt Selling Manager, and also Rob Holden, Training Delivery Manager of World Selling, will give us the information package about selling equipment and also how to adapt existing equipment for the need of sailor with disability. So thank you again, Massimo and Rob, for your time and for being with us today. So without further ado, the floor is yours, please.
Thanks, Sean. So I start sharing my presentation. Okay. So in our previous meeting, we spoke about the general parasailing, as Sean told, how to start the program, different type of disability. And now with this second session, we want to go more in details about, we want to start the program. We have what we need. We need a boat. We need some equipment. So I want to give more details about different boats and different adaptation. And then my colleague Rob Holden will talk about training for sailors with disabilities. So let's start with first page. Next slide. I don't know if I can do it. So we talked about the boat, and as we told last time, most of the boats that are already available in different countries require only minor adaptation in order to accommodate a person with disability. So if you have a boat in your country, and you don't need to be, you need to be like proactive and check if the boats can fit a sailor with disability. So basically, in fact, just any boat that has a stable platform can be used for instruction in accessible sailing program.
Yes, now.
Okay, thank you. So basically, as I told, you don't need to start the program. You don't need a specific para equipment. You can start with every boat you have in your country. If the boat is stable, has a stable platform, has the potential to be used for instruction in accessible sailing program. Important is a lot of time doing adaptation on this boat. So adapt this boat to different types of disabilities, because many of the boats they are not being designed with people with disabilities in mind. So need to be adapted. Adapting a boat is not a big issue. Is extremely simple, is extremely economical, and enable every sailor with disability, can be physical disability, can be intellectual disability, to be involved in sailing and start sailing. I'm showing you now some of the standard boats you can use. These, as you can see, are not a Paralympic equipment, are a different type of boat, usually keel boat, or we have like a cruise boat here. And these boats are perfect for people to start a program with disability, because they are stable in navigation, they have a big keel, they are spacious, so they allow people space and space for legs. They are easy to access because they can be close to the pontoon, so you can use a lift, a hoist, or you can use you can slide inside the boat, and they have sitting spaces. So if you have a boat like this, you can already start a parasailing program. But you have a boat, you have a different requirement about disability, so you can do some adaptation. You can see here we have a seat, we have some padding seats, we have a roll bar to slide from one side to another. So this because every people that start sailing has different necessities, and they need to experiment different solutions. So for someone that has a problem for going from one side to another, a bench can be perfect. For people that they have problem with sliding or about they are sensitive, they can use some padding. If you have a higher type of disability, you can use a seat. And a lot of this equipment can be basically put in the boats when you need to have a, let's say, an equipment for or a training program for people with disability, and can be easily removed. If you can see the roll bar, the padding can be really easily removed. Now, we have some other adaptation here. These are a bit more specific adaptation, and you see they are more like technical. There is still a roll bar in the front of this keel boat. We have a seat, the second image here, with a servo. So even if you have a really high disability and you cannot move your arms, your leg, even your neck, you can use the servo and sip and puff. So basically only blowing with your mouth, sipping and blowing, you can steer the boat. We can have a sliding seat with, you see, like a bicycle chain to use the rudder. This is used for from sailors that have a very high disabilities. And then this one is the simple one, and is like an extension for the tiller. So if you have a problem with your hands, problem grabbing the tiller or something else, you can use a hand extension. Let's say that examples of some items that can be used, you can use anything that you have already in your house or in your club. You can use a camping mat. You can use some rope to extend the length of the rope. You can use a wood plank, needs to be smooth, to create a bench, or you can use a roll of duct tape and electrical tape to create some grabbing for your hands. So basically, main adaptation that we have seen in the last year are usually a non-slip seat. As I told, you can use a camping or your mat. You need to pad around sharp objects in the cockpit, like you can use duct tape or electrical tape. You can use a bench going from one side to another of the boat, and this can be wood, can be plastic, can be anything you already had. And you can extend sheet, and you can have extra loops of rope to form handles to provide stability. If you are in a wheelchair and you need something to grab, to go from one side to the boat to the other, you can create some rope or grip. Basically, these are the guidelines for some minor adaptation. Another guidelines is minimize obstruction inside and around the boat. If you want to slide from one side to another, there is no need to have something in the middle. You need to have a free space. So as you can see, there are a lot of different adaptations. They are very easy to do, and it's really helpful for any sailor with any type of disability to have this adaptation on the boat. Now we talk about general boat, general equipment. So I can start a program with my boat that I already have in my club as a keel boat. But another option is I want to have a specific power equipment. I want to start a program that is more like competitive, and I want to start training for competition. I have different options for equipment. We have mainly the difference is one-person boat and two-person boat. The one-person boat, this is the Spara equipment that we use in our event. There is a class that is the Hansa, mainly is the Hansa 303. It's called a non-technical boat. As you see inside the cockpit, is very easy. You have a sheet for the jib, sheet for the jam, for the jib, and a really easy steering. So everyone can use this boat because it's very easy. Even if you are new for sailing, this is really easy. And usually can accommodate one person, but can be used for two persons, like a coach or a sailor. On my right side, you can see the 2.4. 2.4 is probably the main parasailing class, and is a very technical boat. You see the difference between the Hansa and the 2.4. You have a lot of controls. You can have a foot steering if you have problem with your arms. You can have understeering using the big joystick you see in the middle. This is the boat that has been used in all the Paralympic games we had since 2000, and is a very technical boat. Is a good boat. It's a bit difficult if you haven't never sailed before, because it's not easy to sail like the Hansa 303. Next slide is two-person boat. These two-person boat are the boat we used in our events. The RS Venture Connect is the boat we use in our World Championship. As you see, it has the configuration is two seat side by side, and you see there is also here a big like we call it joystick, and the boat has different to the one-person boat, has a Gennaker. As you see, is the black big black sail in front of the boat, and this one can be used like the Hansa 303 with a servo. So even if you have a high type of disability, you can use the sip and puff to steer the boat. Another two-person boat is the SV14, is our newest boat, and you see is two-person, but is a different configuration. Is one in front and one in the back, and instead of the joystick, you have like a bicycle steering. Also here you see there is all the ropes and sheets are really easy to have in front of you. And as I told, it's a new boat and it's starting to be used now. Then we have other boats that are basically some trimarans, some other different configuration of two-person boat, some catamarans like the Obi trap seat. So there are a lot of boats that can be used for parasailing. As I told in my first slide, if it's stable and if it's safe and you can fit comfortably a person with a disability, you can use a boat for your para event. Now, I'm leaving the floor to my colleague, Rob Holden, Training and Delivery Manager, that basically will speak about the instruction and coaching for parasailing. Rob?
Thank you very much, Massimo. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. I hope you're having an incredible day. And thank you for the Asian Paralympic Committee for including us on this and for including me. I'm not sure of the audience that is before me, so I've taken this from a very broad outlook, but really looking at people that are already delivering coaching and instructing to able-bodied sailors, and looking what is the difference and what needs to be looked at more deeply to change over and deliver successful programs to people with disabilities. So the one thing that I think is vitally important, you don't want to change anything. You want to adapt according to the need and not the expectation, not what you expect as an instructor or a coach. You need to adapt according to the expectation of the sailor. So don't change what you're doing. What you're doing, if you're a good instructor, a good coach, is good. What you need to do is adapt according to the sailor. So that implies that you're going to communicate with the sailor regularly. Next slide, please, Massimo. So a couple of general principles across coaching and instructing. Firstly, I want to talk a little bit about how inclusive sailing is. I came in from a non-para background. I was mainly coach developing, coaching, and instructing. And Massimo brought me into this arena, and I was absolutely astounded at what diversity of people we can include in sailing. People that are quadriplegics and just can have no movement of their body can go sailing. People who who might just be an amputee and have battle on land with various things, they can go sailing. And it is incredible how inclusive sailing is, and what freedom and just joy it gives to people with disabilities. So as an instructor or a coach, you need to embrace that inclusivity of the sport. You need to be wanting these people to sail with anybody. Everyone can sail together. We can sail against each other. We can sail in different boats against each other, or we can sail on one boat together. Vitally important that your instructors and coaches realize this. Communication is vital. A good coach, a good instructor should be very good at communication. But if we are moving on to working with people with different levels of ability, we need to communicate with them even more. Throw away expectation. Don't think you know. The person who you are teaching knows. You need to understand that there are various levels of ability. You need to understand that you need to adapt certain pieces of equipment, even if it is one of the Paralympic style boats that Massimo showed. There can still be a lot of individual adaptation that needs to take place. And you need to follow a journey through this with the sailor in the boat and work out what is going to work best for them, what is going to make them the best on the water, what is going to help them enjoy the sailing and win the races. There are a lot of different adaptations that can be done, and don't think you've adapted a boat for a sailor and then it's going to stay like that, because as they get better, so they're going to require different levels of adaptation. They're going to move on and want things to be finer tuned and be able to have more control over the sails, over their steering, and over different things. So you always need to be speaking to your sailor and listening to what they need to adapt. There are also many different personalities, and any good coach or instructor needs to be aware of that. And this comes in even more with people with disabilities. You need to be talking, you need to be communicating, and you need to be aware of that person's background and how you're going to make this experience the best experience possible for that person. Understand that students are able. I find a lot of instructors that move over, especially instructors, not so much coaches, but instructors who move over to working with people with disabilities, they think the people are not able. But you need to expect that the people are able and then adapt to that and speak to the people, work out what can they do, but they are able. Don't think they are not able, because they're very able. And this presentation goes a lot about lessons I have learned in my time working, and I have learned a hang of a lot of lessons. I expected things to be so much more complicated than they are, and I expected people to be different. But you need to just expect the best out of the people and work with them. Time was the biggest lesson that I had to learn when I started working with people with disabilities. Firstly, the time it takes to get from when the sailors arrive to when they get on the water. We have to accept it takes longer for people to get dressed. It takes longer for people to get from the change room to the boats. It takes longer to get the boats out onto the race course. all these things. So time, you need to be patient. You need to budget for more time for preparation, more time for rigging the boats. Then the other aspect of time is the length of time of the sessions. And this again is going to vary with the people you are working with. If you are working with people who are amputees and have feeling in their legs and their lower bodies, you can go on with a normal length of session. But if you have a person who can't feel their feet, you've got to be aware that you've got to feel their feet for them. So if it's very cold, you need to know that you can't stay out there long because they haven't got the circulation in their feet that most people have. So shorter sessions depending on the ability. Then safety. Again, if you are an instructor or a coach, safety should be the cornerstone of everything you do. We want to make sure all our sailors are safe. Now, in safety with people with disabilities, we need to be aware that there are extra things. If someone falls in the water, it is more difficult to get them out of the water. If you're putting someone in the boat, you need to be considering more things about how their bodies are fitting into the boat. You need to consider their legs. You need to consider their arms. But other than that, we need our sailors to wear life jackets. And if a person is a quadriplegic or a paraplegic, I recommend a full life jacket. So using a life jacket that is a full life jacket, that turns a person on their back and keeps their head out of the water. So we know they can't turn themselves around. But other than that, they can fall in the water. They're not going to dissolve in the water. People who are amputees can wear buoyancy aids, which don't turn you on your back and float you properly. So you need to just assess the person and then assess the life jacket. Equipment to help people out of the water. You need to be aware if someone does fall into the water. It's not a train smash. It's not the end of the world. You just need to be aware that either you need enough people on your safety boat to be able to lift this person out the water, or you need some mechanism you're going to use to lift this person out of the water. This becomes very important in areas where there's cold water. If a person with a disability is in the water and you take it and it's very cold and you take long to get them out of the water, then it can become a serious issue. So be aware that if someone goes in the water, you're going to have to physically lift them out of the water, which generally when we're training would be done by 2 or 3 people on the boat. And you can, there's methods of doing that by turning a person backwards and pulling them out of the water. Ideally, I'd recommend that you have to have soft-bodied boats, so inflatable boats when you're working, unless you've got a boat that's specialized, that's got a ramp that you can lower down into the water and pull them in. Otherwise, we've got to work with soft-bodied boats, so we can pull people over the edge of the boat without injuring them. Then there's a few other physical aspects of when you're handling the people. So firstly, as I say, handling of the people. Ask, where can I hold you? Ask them. Communication is absolutely key. Some people, you can grab them under the arms and lift them out of the water, lift them out of a boat into a boat. Some people, that's painful for them. Some people don't have arms, so we need to consider that we might not do that. But think about it beforehand, speak to the sailor about it beforehand, and then work with that. Temperature. I've spoken about temperature before, but it is vital you are aware. You are managing the person's heat and cooling. A lot of people with serious disabilities can't feel when they're getting too hot or too cold, and you've got to manage that. You need to speak to the sailor regularly and make sure they are comfortable. Sun protection on areas where a person doesn't have feeling, like on their legs, if they are paraplegic or quadriplegic, you need to make sure that they have got sun protection on. You need to keep an eye that that sun protection is staying on. If they're getting very wet, you need to reapply regularly, because their skin can burn very easily and they don't feel it. So it is up to the coach or instructor to make sure they are aware of that. Catheters and bags and various other medical equipment, as a coach, don't freak out about it. It's nothing weird. Just speak to the sailor about it. Ask them what can be done, what can't be done, how long they need to take till how long can they be on the water. Speak to the sailor. They are aware of it. They're working with it every day. If you're unsure, you can also speak to the carers that are with the sailors. They know exactly what needs to be done. But don't let a catheter or a bag or some medical thing stop a person from experiencing the sport of sailing, because it doesn't have to. People sail regularly with catheters, etc. Next slide. Thank you, Massimo. So looking more specifically at instructors, assess your student. Every good instructor should assess their student. With a person with a disability, it is essential that you speak to your student beforehand. Make sure you're aware of what they can do and what they can't do. Make sure you're aware of what their fears and their confidences are. You need to let them have a good experience. This should go without saying, but very often instructors are scared to speak about how can you get in the boat. There's so much PC around this that they're scared to ask the question. Just ask the question, speak to them, get the right answers, and do the right things. Sessions, as I said, in general, we run shorter sessions with people with disabilities, especially if we're working with quads and paraplegics. Consider individual adaptations. I've spoken about that. Even in the instructors area where you're just teaching how to sail, you need to think of adaptations. It might be as simple as a little plank that goes across the boat with a rope that the person can pull. But create these adaptations just to make the sailor's life easier. But don't think one adaptation works for another sailor. Speak to each sailor and make sure they are going to manage with what you've adapted and what you've made happen. Expect success. I find a lot of instructors, when they first get involved with people with disabilities, they think they can't do anything. So they expect failure. Don't expect a failure. Expect success and allow success. Success will happen. Expect it and allow it, and the sailors will enjoy themselves. Vitally important, I believe, in any sports program, but especially in sailing, you need a step-by-step learn to sail program. It needs to be a program where you have thought about each step and written it down, and you train according to those steps. And if anyone has any questions about programs here, World Sailing does have a basic suite of programs that we can help you with. We can work with anyone who needs a program. But it is vital that you work on a step-by-step program. Next slide, please, Massimo. So getting people in and out of boats, I think it's very important, and we need to cover this as coaches and instructors. You need to get people in and out of boats. Don't let it be the block. Don't create a barrier to getting people sailing. There's a lot of ways of doing this. The first and most simple way is carrying the person. And you can see on the bottom right-hand side, helping a person into the boat by lifting them out of the wheelchair, putting them in the boat. Couple of things with that. Make sure you ask the sailor where you can pick them up. So where is it comfortable if I pick you up this way, that way, whatever. But speak to the sailor. Secondly, make sure your footing is secure with every step you take. You're carrying a person, you don't want to drop them. Anyone you carry, you don't want to drop. So make sure you take each step you take and be safe. Then sliding in of boxes, I'll go to the middle center photo, and that's one example. The boat's slightly higher than the jetty that we've got there, where they're going to get on. A couple of things, make sure the box's wood is smooth. We don't want any sailor getting splinters in their backside. We want them to be comfortable. So make sure the box is smooth. Remember, if you work, a lot of people you're working with won't feel if they get a splinter in their backsides, and it causes a lot of big problems afterwards if you don't deal with it. So make sure those boxes are smooth. Ideally, stick some plastic, a thick vinyl plastic or something on top so that they can slide safely without getting any injuries. Another way of this, which is very similar, is if the boat is lower than the actual jetty, they can get out onto the jetty and then move across and get into the boat from there. Even if the boats are reasonably similar height, a lot of paraplegics can get into the boat. And then any amputees and this sort of person would generally be able to get into the boat. Hoists on the left-hand side, there's a simple hoist. It's quite a simple structure with a seat that you hoist the person up, swing them around, and lower them into the boat. Very safe, very secure, and just make sure you hook everything up properly and you operate slowly. Don't try and lower them or raise them too fast. Also, communication. Speak to them all the time about what you're doing. Inform them what you're doing. Another thing that is done in some centers where they're operating off a beach is getting people off other boats. Now, this is tricky and it's not fully advised, but if this is the only way you've got to do it, do it. We don't want barriers. So create make sure your boat that you're getting off of, so if you've got a rubber boat, is the same height or very close to the same height as the sailing boat. Make sure the boat you're taking the sailor out of is also very stable. We don't want to move everybody to one side and suddenly the boat falls over. It needs to be a stable boat. And then you can move the person over into the other boat very easily. With most levels of ability, all these methods would work. We find with quadriplegics, we normally would use a hoist to get someone into a boat. Right, next slide, please, Massimo. So coaching, I see coaching as that person who the sailor's been taught to sail, and now we're coaching them to sail better, sail faster. Don't change your coaching philosophy. Every coach should have a coaching philosophy. We don't want to change our coaching philosophy. However, we want to speak to our sailor and develop a coach-athlete philosophy. So we might have to adapt our coaching philosophy to fit with what the sailor wants. But this is no different to what would be happening with an able-bodied athlete. I need to find out what the sailor wants to achieve, what can they achieve. And we develop a philosophy according to which we are going to work. So always have a coaching philosophy of your own, and always have a philosophy that you have developed with your sailor. So know what you're going to coach, how you're going to coach it, when you're going to coach it, and know why you do this. Why are you coaching people with disabilities? Well, I hope it's not because you want to be famous. I hope it's because you want to be a good coach and help people into a new realm. Develop a periodized plan. Okay, we have to have a plan when we are working with high performance athletes, and we need to consider our people with disabilities as high performance athletes. They want to be the best in their class that they can possibly be. So we need to develop a plan as a coach that is going to include boat handling, fitness, competition, and physiology, all aspects of sailing. We need to bring into that plan. We need to know when we are going to train this. We need to know how long it's going to take us to train this. And we need to know the steps we are going to follow to improve this sailor. And all that goes into our plan. Next slide, please, Massimo. So do not eliminate fitness. I find a lot of people don't expect top level parasailors to do fitness. Fitness is very important. If you're going to be out on the water for long races and you're going to be competing, you need to be fit. However, like with everything else, there's going to be adaptations. And in this case, I suggest you speak to somebody who really understands the sailor you're working with and can give you proper, well-developed fitness plans. We don't want a sailor to go into the gym and feel that they can't do the exercises, or even worse, hurt themselves. So I suggest every coach consults a professional in this area and gets a fitness plan. But you need a fitness plan. Make sure you speak to someone and get a fitness plan for the sailor. Training timing must be considered in the plan. So again, I spoke about timing enough. I don't have to go over that. But in coaching, the thing you've got to be careful of with performance coaches that have been working with able-bodied people is they like to be out on the water for longer periods of time. This needs to be considered and adapted. Very important. Consider maintenance and setup of equipment. Include the sailor in the maintenance and setup of the equipment. With able-bodied people, we expect them to do the maintenance. There is a lot that our sailors will not be able to do on their own, but you need to include them. You need to be speaking to them about it. Where do we want this? How do we want to change that? We've bumped the boat. How must we fix it? What's going on? Make sure you speak to your sailors and work with them on the setup and the maintenance of the equipment. Be clear that in most cases, and this comes to understanding the class rules of the boats, you can change most of the settings to where they sit so that the person can easily get to them, that the person can easily adjust those settings. So think of the setup of the boat, but consider the class rules within that and make sure you fall within the class rules so that you are sailing legal. Next slide, please, Massimo. Everything I've said points to this slide. An athlete-centered approach is vital and essential. Every modern coach in any sport should have an athlete-centered approach in coaching nowadays. In the past, we used to work very much with a coach-centered thing. What the coach decided, that was what went. We have changed from there. We've modernized from there. We've moved on. If you want to be an effective coach, you will have an athlete-centered approach. But this needs to be highlighted more when you're working with people with disabilities. You need to know what that athlete needs, what they want, what they can do, what they can't do. Expect them to be champions. Expect the best out of them. Thank you, Massimo.
Yeah, I think we finished our presentation now. So if you have a question, me and Rob, we are happy to answer your question.
Thank you, Massimo and Rob. That was another good opportunity to have better understanding on parasailing, in particular equipment and requirement for parasailor. And it's very important and strong message that don't change anything, adapt according to need, not expectation. Also, an athlete-centered approach is vital and essential, that we need to keep this in our mind. Okay. Yeah, it's time for a question. If anyone has question to Massimo and Rob. Yeah, we got the question from hold on, from Lachbach Ishar regarding the classification. The question is about how many sports class or sports classification category in parasailing. That is the question. The first question.
We have our boats are usually the one-person boat are minimum disability. So you know, is the minimum disability classification stated in the APC functional classification. It's basically every type of disability that makes you eligible. And for a two-person boat, We have a maximum level of 8 mixing to disability, but this is only for World Championship or World Sailing international event. So in any other event, you can have all the disability you want. And other than physical disability, we include intellectual disability. We have blind sailing. So every disability, every type of category and disability is allowed to sail.
Okay. Also, I know Dan, Jasper, are you with us now, I guess? And I know you have several questions, and you already share some questions in advance. So do you want me to read it, or you want to ask the question yourself?
I can see the question in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask the question for you, Mr. Dan Jasper. So the question is, what plans do World Sailing have for hosting a parasailing event in Asia in the post-COVID years?
We have a plan to have a PDP in 2021 in Singapore, in probably July. We have another PDP that is our development program in Hong Kong, probably in early 2022. We are planning to have, probably in conjunction with the PDP in Singapore in 2021, an events involving parasailing. But then we are open, we want to discuss with countries in Asia, because we have boats, some of the boats there, and we will be happy to work with different countries to organize events. Can be a national events, can be a regional events. We are, as World Sailing, we are keen to help you to organize an event. And if you are interested, just let us know, and we will work together.
Yeah. Okay. Also, this question also from Dan Jasper. What are the main perceived barrier to participation in sailing activity by people with the disability in Asia?
I think usually the main barrier is not for the people, because we receive a question from sailors from Asia, is the lack of equipment, the lack of knowledge about parasailing or training. That's why we had this presentation, because you don't need a specific equipment. You can start sailing, as I told, with any boat. If you have as Rob told, if you have a coach, you can start coaching parasailors. It's not different than coaching any other sailor. So I think these are the two main barriers. But there are barriers that can be easily passed. You can start sailing with any boat, and you can teach and train with any coach.
Okay. Another question from Dan. How many disabled Saleability inclusive sailing programs are already established in Asia?
We have, I don't know about the number of Saleability, because our count is, we count the M&As that are involved in sailing. We have 12 M&As actively involved in sailing with a parasailing program. Let's start from the local to the international level. I'm sure that we will have a lot of other countries that are not officially reporting parasailing, but they are interested or they are doing something. But we don't have a number of Saleability, because we count only our M&As that are the member national authorities.
Okay, next question from Haider Aludani. That what the distance in water for the parasailing? Can we practice this game in rivers?
You can absolutely, let's say, you can sail in river. I'm in London, and we have a lot of sailability club. They sail in the river on some reservoir. So let's say the keel of the one-person boat is around 1 meter, 1.5 meters. So you can sail everywhere. Then, if you want to use, let's say, a bigger boat, you need a deep water. But usually the river is not a problem. You can sail everywhere.
Okay. Intessar all to be, you raise your hand, so you can ask your question. Or do you want me to read your question? Or you prefer to ask your question by yourself? Okay, let me do this. So 2 questions. The first one is related to classification and classification. So what about the intellectual disability? So I think the question is that the athlete with the intellectual disability can participate in parasailing.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some of the programs around the world. There, most of the participants are people with intellectual disability. Intellectual disability can absolutely sail. If they are not able to sail alone, they can sail with a coach. And in 2018, we had we signed a cooperation document with INAS, that now is Virtus, to expand our sports for people with intellectual disability. And we are planning to have let's say, a world championship, for sailing world championship for people with intellectual disability in 2022 in Australia. So yeah, intellectual disability is more than welcome to sailing.
Yeah. Also, the message from Kay Raybon from, I guess, Hong Kong, said Hong Kong can help with the intellectual disability sailing because they have many sailors in their country. So you might contact Kay Raybon for further assistance from them. Okay. And next question also from Intisar, when you will start the development program again?
We never stop so let's say the development program is always going forward. We are doing webinar, we are doing one-to-one programs, we are providing help. We have stopped let's say the on the water and traveling program due to the COVID. We want to start as soon as possible. Our plan is to start mid-2021. But let's say the development program, providing information, providing support, never stopped. So if you want help, just contact me or Rob, and we will be very keen to arrange a question, a webinar or a call to explain all what you need to start as soon as possible.
Okay. Next question from Yuki. You want me to read it, or are you prefer to ask question yourself? Okay. What would be the best size of a class with the people with different disability for one coach if we don't have enough resources for one-on-one?
I leave Rob for this one. This is our coach.
Thank you, Yuki. Very good question. Like with everyone else, when we are working with able-bodied people, we want to be sure that you can give everyone the amount of attention they need and that what you're doing is safe. So if the worst case scenario happens, nobody will be in a bad situation because of your training. What I recommend, it again depends on what equipment you're using. If you're using a bigger boat that can take 4 or 5 people, obviously you can fill that boat up to what is comfortable. If you are using single-handed boats, we recommend a maximum of 6 to 1. So 6 boats to 1 instructor, but that will also vary according to the ability of the sailor. Some of the boats like the Hansa are very simple boats, very easy to handle. So to work on a 6 to 1 ratio would be, so 6 boats to 1 instructor is very easy. But if you're going to work with more complicated boats, if you're working with very fast boats like the trimarans or the catamarans, then I would reduce that number maybe to 2 or 3 to 1 at most. But generally, and in performance coaching, if the sailors are really good sailors, I would go up to 8 to 1. So 8 sailors to 1 instructor. Again, depending on the ability. You just need to be aware there are often, it takes longer to get people in and out the water, the boats, and get the boats launched. So you need to take that into consideration. You might need extra helpers on shore, but for the actual coaching, 6 to 1 is a safe number. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from floor? Okay, another question from Dan Jasper. Okay, let me read. Fundraising to support equipment purchase always seems to be a big barrier for disabled sailing programs. So what hints, tips, or advice would you give that may help aspiring parasailing programs when they look at how to raise their important funds? What examples do you have of projects where these have worked?
Let's say our PDP, that is development program, are usually partly funded by World Sailing, and partly they are funded by local sponsor, local sailing federation. My suggestion and my tip is contact, if you can speak with your sailing federation, if your sailing club, if you have a big sponsor of a company. There is a lot of CRS funds that can be used, and maybe you can find, let's say, a charity that wants to help in with the rehabilitation, because sailing can be used, is absolutely a sport that can help in the rehabilitation. To do an example, the PDP next year in Singapore will be partly funded by a sponsor. That is a social program called Big Metazone, Big Brother, Big Sister, and he's using sailing as a way to help young people and people with excluded by the social tissue to be involved. So my suggestion is to speak with everyone in your area and find help. It's sailing is not an expensive sport. You can use, as I told, I come back always to the same. You can use the equipment you already have, and you don't need to have a big investment to start. And then you need to see if you have a big number of participants. You can start finding the sponsor. We have examples. We have Oman. They found a big sponsor to start a 4-year program for parasailing. We had this in Singapore. So contact companies or charities and work with them to find some sponsor.
Okay. I think, Rob, you wanted to say something because you're muted.
I thought I unmuted. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to emphasize something that Massimo mentioned, and that is you've got to start your program. If you're going to look for sponsorship on something that you are planning on doing, it's a lot harder than if you're going to look for sponsorship on something that you have started. So look at what equipment you've got. And if you haven't got the ideal equipment, start with easier disabilities to handle, amputees, people like that, that you can handle and get the program going. But it's vital to start the program, and then you can go out and look for sponsorship. It's a lot easier than if you actually go out without anything going. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah. Can I add one thing? In the boat, let's say in the equipment you see, every boat has a different cost. So you need, even if you want to start a program and you have some funds, you can check this, let's say, you can adapt so you can choose one of these boats depending on the fund you have. Some are more expensive, some are cheaper. So it really depends on the fund you have. It's not because you have a fixed fund that you can have only one boat. You can have maybe one of one type, 3 of the other one. So yeah.
Yep. Okay. The question from Chris Simons, that how will World Sailing ensure that sailing will be represented at the 2028 Paralympic Games?
We need participation. We need all the countries, Asia especially, because we have in Europe, we have some participation. We have countries to be involved in our program, to organize a national event, to organize an international event, to compete at our World Championship. For this reason, we are doing a lot of webinars. We are here to help, and we can, let's say, we can help participation at our main events, and we can help providing info, providing some link between different countries. So, but at the end, we need people sailing. We need everyone involved in sailing, and at least try to sail and see how it is.
Thank you. More question from floor. Nope. Okay, I think this is all for today's session. Well, please be noted that there will be one more session to go, and it will be about the functional classification of parasailing. The date and time is not confirmed yet, but once we got confirmation, that I will update you, so you can also join the next session for parasailing. So before we close today's session, Massimo and Rob, do you have anything to add?
I want to thank you and the Asian Paralympic Committee for the opportunity that we have. And I think the presentation will be online, and there is my email. So for any question, don't care about a question you have, can be the simple one, can be complicated. Please send me an email or contact me, and I'll be happy to come back to you with all the info you need. Rob?
Thank you. Yes, I just want to add that this is about people and giving people a chance to really experience an amazing sport. And that's what we've got to go out and do. Don't create barriers. Don't be scared. Just go out and get people sailing safely. We need to get people to experience this. It'll change their lives, I can guarantee you. The Paralympics and all those things will come. but let's get more people enjoying the amazing sport of sailing out in the sun. So thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Massimo and Rob again, and also thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe and healthy until we see each other again. See you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye,
Thank
Massimo.
you.